Laila, I'm very excited to have you here. This is something with our events producer, Ariel, I was talking about several months ago. I don't know if you know, but I actually got really interested in the sweet science, as they say. Way back, I was a Bruce Lee fan, studied Jeet Kune Do, and he was very inspired by your dad, Muhammad Ali, especially the fluidity with how he moved around the ring. And I was watching one of your fights, and I saw echoes of how your dad moved in you. So let me get started. Muhammad Ali's daughter, growing up in that household, he was the greatest boxer to ever have fought in the sport. What was it like growing in that household with someone who was just a cultural icon, cut such a wide swath?
Well, first of all, hello everyone. How are you doing?
Yeah.
So I get asked that question, and I think about it all the time, right? And you know, the experience was the only one that I know, right? But I think the most amazing thing was being behind the scenes. Everyone knows my father, his life was like an open book, but having him be able to tell us why he did the things that he did. You know, I remember being annoyed with my dad going out in public and having crowds around us everywhere we went. It was like, you're gonna get stuck there for 2 to 3 hours because he's gonna sign autographs and he's gonna take pictures and do magic tricks. And we're like, oh God, I don't wanna go with Dad. You know, you get tired, yeah, kid, yeah. Oh yeah, he used to carry a black briefcase.
Whoa,
with his magic tricks. And, yeah, and I saw the same magic tricks all the time, you know. So, but, you know, for him to get in the car with us afterwards and say, I do this because I like to make people smile. I like to make people feel seen, you know, because they look at me and they put me on this pedestal and I like them to just see that I'm a regular person. You know, he used to sometimes pull over on the side of the road and give out like $100 bills to homeless people. So he would tell us why and why he took extra time with those who thought maybe he wouldn't pay them any attention, like the busboy or the waitress, you know, and it really just kind of shaped my view of, you know, how we should treat others. And it just had a really big impact on my life.
This larger than, you know, there's the performance version of him that everyone sees, and you can see he's just such a natural. He entertains. Not only is he amazing, the best at his sport, but he draws in a crowd. He's the entertainment factor of it is a big part of it, but that's fascinating, this other side of him growing up as a dad, and the weight he must have carried in the 60s as well. Being a black athlete, pioneering a sport, you know, the Vietnam War, there's elements there. So are there things that you took away that you, later in your career, about how to balance the thing you're passionate about, the sport that you're passionate about, with how the persona that you want to create for yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, everything for my father was intentional, and he led with his heart for the most part. You know, sometimes it was a good thing, sometimes it wasn't so good. So I learned from the things he did well, and I learned from the things that he didn't do well, right? Both of my parents. So again, just having that front seat view, behind the scenes view, I kind of, you know, always know what's going on. The public only knows what you let them know, right? So for me, it was really important when I decided to become a boxer to not only find my lane, right? Because I didn't want to just be Muhammad Ali's daughter and ride off of that. I really wanted to be a fighter. I really wanted to be a world champion. I really wanted respect. And at the same time, I had to be cognizant of my father's image, what he stood for. Even if it wasn't things that I agreed with, even if we weren't the same religion, I had to always respect the path that he laid before me. So really finding that balance was you know, important. It was a little bit challenging as well in terms of decision making. But yeah, I always think about how the decisions that I make, how I carry myself, the things that I say, the things that I do, how they're going to impact others, how, you know, young girls are looking up to me, watching me. You know, so I always thought about that. And I've made decisions along those lines.
So here you are today, the greatest in your sport, an athlete, an entrepreneur. But it wasn't always like that. And you were pretty open about the turbulent years earlier when you were maybe a teenager. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I wrote a book, Reach, Finding Strength, Spirit, and Personal Power, and I decided to write that book shortly after I became a boxer, because a lot of people were just like, why does she want to be a fighter? Like, because women's boxing wasn't even to the point where it is now.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the Olympics. Women weren't fighting at Madison Square Garden like recently last year as a main event. And people didn't understand. Then they were like, oh, you're too pretty, or is this a publicity stunt, So I felt the need to write this book, not only to answer those questions, but also to just share what I had been through to help others, that always see the end result, but doesn't see what I had gone through to get to where I was. So yeah, when I was growing up, I was very, that's me in the black there in the front. It's just like, I'm the youngest of 9, a sassy girl, right? Always the one that was kind of want to do her own thing. Like, I'm the one that my father was like, okay, this one's gonna give me a run for my money, right? The only one to become a boxer. But I used to just, that energy was not going in the right direction when I was young. I wanted to get out of the neighborhood and go experience other things with people who didn't know who my father was, who didn't come from a wealthy family. And I got myself in trouble because I had this attitude about myself. I was very confident, and it can come off as conceit, right? And people pick fights with you, and I didn't back down from a fight. I always have been a fighter. I wouldn't start it, but I had no problem with conflict. Even to this day, I kind of get excited. Like, don't be in the Starbucks line and get an attitude with someone in front of me, because I'm going to probably get in it and be like, excuse me, you don't need to talk to her that way. Like, yeah.
I want to travel with you in the airport, when I need some help getting
right.
Yeah.
You want a friend like me. Yeah. But in a nutshell, I got in trouble to the point where I was in juvenile hall for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, I just skipped. You're like, whoa, Starbucks to juvenile hall. Yeah, but I wrote about this in my book because there was a lot of things that led up to that. Some dysfunction in the family. My mom got remarried, had a not so nice husband. I had a lot of anger, and I needed this outlet, and boxing for me really became that outlet. And you hear that a lot with a lot of fighters. Usually they grew up in a different situation than I did, but you hear that you kind of have to have that grit and something there that you pull out of you.
Something you mentioned to me, it didn't occur to you earlier that you could be a boxer, would be a boxer, despite having a dad who was the greatest in the sport. Talk to me about how you decided boxing was for you.
So I saw women's boxing for the first time when I was 18. At the time, I had actually, because again, I wanted to be independent, I wanted to be on my own, so I moved out the house at 18 because I had gone to beauty school, after school, took the bus to beauty school, got a manicuring license, opened up Laila's nail studio, by the time I was 18. And at the time, I was living on my own, paying my own bills, I was just like doing my thing. I was like, I'm right where I wanted to be. I see women's boxing. I turn on the TV to watch a Mike Tyson fight at a friend's house, and these women come in the ring on the undercard. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know women box. And I was totally glued to the television. And then they started fighting and brawling, and it turned bloody. And I was like, I want to do that. I can fight, like, professionally. Like, the thought had never occurred to me until I saw women's boxing. Myself with my own 2 eyes. So I went home that night dreaming of becoming a boxer, and then I started thinking about what everyone would think and how was I able to do it. I had never been an athlete. I had never participated in sports. I was too busy being bad in school. If any of you have participated in sports or have children, you know how much dedication it takes to go to practice and go to the games, and I didn't have that support. So I was just like, I didn't know the first thing it would take. So I decided to let it go because I was like, I'm in school, I have my business, like, this is crazy. Like, what's my dad gonna think? I'm not gonna do it. And a year later, I was like, it kept calling. So I decided to go to a gym and start training. I said, let me go to the gym, let me see if I have what it takes in secrecy.
Even that decision to go to the gym, right? You're carrying the Ali name. I'm blown away you weren't an athlete before. And that first day, I mean, you've got so much weight that you're carrying, like, what if I don't, what if I don't look good on the first day? What if this expectation's there? What got you going that first day? And that representation too, seeing women boxers. Absolutely. That's the thing that got you going. But then the first day, I mean, was this all in your head? You're thinking about all of these things and saying, how can I start from the beginning?
From the beginning, I thought of the big picture. I'm a realistic person, and strategic thinker, methodical thinker. So I was like, I'm Muhammad Ali's daughter. This will be a big deal if I become a fighter. I never wanted to live my life publicly. Like, I knew that already. So I was like, that inner turmoil was just like, oh God, like.
Did you think you were still figuring it out on day one? Like,
No,
boxing's for
absolutely.
me. And
Absolutely. I said, let me go to the gym. Let me see if I have what it takes, because I want to do this, but I don't know if I should do this. So I wanted to make sure I had the talent to do it, because I was confident and it was already on this path that I felt like was a road to success. So let me see if this is for me. If it's not, I'm gonna let it go. Let me see if I have the natural ability. I'm gonna have to ask some opinions from the trainer. Do I have it? All of that. And I'm gonna have to see what it feels like, because I had never done it. So I decided to go in secrecy.
Okay.
Like, I didn't tell anybody why I was really there. I was like, oh, I just want to lose weight.
And you didn't talk to your dad about it?
No, not at all.
How come?
Because I knew that my dad wasn't gonna like it, and I didn't really want to hear what he had to say.
Yeah.
Until I decided what I want to do. So this is something we should know in life if you don't already. When you have an idea and you're unsure about something, but you have a passion or desire, you need to keep it to yourself. Because everybody is going to give you their opinion, and everybody has an opinion, and it doesn't matter. And sometimes, it will affect you, right? It will influence you, and you'll hear these negative voices, and if you're not already sure about something and you're still trying to figure it out, it can kill it for you.
Yeah.
So unless there's someone obviously you can trust that's really gonna be supportive, but for me, I was like, no, let me go see if I can do this, if I want to do this first.
Yeah.
So I had to get that confidence within myself before I told my dad, which eventually we had that conversation.
So how long did you wait before you told your dad? And what was the early sessions like?
You mean the early sessions?
The early, for day one of boxing, second day of boxing, did you come back?
Okay, so two questions. So the first thing is, it was super tough. I mean, when you go in, it was almost like, you've seen Karate Kid, right? Where he's like, wax on, wax off. And you're like, what is this? And then he's not even realizing he's learning the movements and the repetition and the discipline it takes to do the things that you don't even want to do. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm doing it, without thinking about it. So it was kind of the same thing with boxing. It was just like that. Like, why do I have to stand like this? Why do we have to tie this string to this leg and that leg to learn the distance to when you're moving to keep that same distance? All these things you don't think about that go into, the footwork.
Were there other women at the gym?
There was a couple of other women, and just like men, we come in different weight classes, weight size. So they weren't my size, so they weren't women that I would ever fight. But there were women that had been in the gym long before me and were already boxing. Yeah, absolutely. But it was mainly men.
Yeah. Did you ask them for advice or?
No.
No. So you wanted to feel it for yourself?
I wanted to feel it for myself. I got in there, learned what it took. I was at the gym after school, after work, every night, 8 o'clock, I walk in that gym. And I was super excited to learn. And it took about 6 months for me to fall all the way in love with boxing. And by that time I had been running, I had lost weight, because you get in there and you're like, okay, I hadn't been working out, I wasn't healthy. I dropped probably about 30 pounds. I'm in the weight class that I need to be in. And I had already made the decision that I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
So then that was when my dad came in town and was like, I hear you're boxing, because it gets around.
It gets around, yeah.
Yeah. So it got around, and I said, yeah, I am, and we had a very serious conversation. And
did he try to talk you out of it?
Absolutely.
He did, okay.
Yeah. He tried talking me out of it indirectly, because he knew Laila. He was like, I can't tell her no, she's not gonna listen, so.
What was his objection to you boxing?
He said, do you understand how much pressure will be on you? And I said, yes, I've thought about this and I'm ready to face it. But again, I'm 18, he's like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So he's like, I'm like, yeah, I thought about it, I wanna do it. Okay, well, do you realize, like, you're gonna get into a ring and there's gonna be lights on you and there's gonna be an audience, and if you get hit, and you get knocked down, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I'm gonna get back up just like you did. And he's like, okay, so what if you get knocked out? I'm like, that's not gonna happen. But if it did, I'm gonna get back up. So finally he said what was really on his mind. He said, it's not for you. I don't want you to do it. It's a man's sport. It's not for women. And I just don't want you to do it. And I just said, well, Dad, I respect how you feel, but I'm gonna do it. And I've already made my mind up. So, you're either gonna support me or you're not. And then we kind of left it like that. And again, I can look back now and I realize that he was afraid. Women's boxing was not where it is now. He didn't want his young daughter in a dirty, grimy job. I wouldn't want my son or daughter to box.
Yeah.
So I understood why he said what he said, and he did believe that at the time. but I went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah.
And he did come back and apologize later, I want to say, after I won world titles and got, I got 15
Just a few
knocked
world
out.
titles. That's
He's
all
like,
you need to do to.
Yeah, he's like, I was wrong.
Yeah.
But that was big for him to come to me just as serious in that moment. He told me not to do it and said, I was wrong. You can fight, women can fight, I'm proud of you. And we cried together.
Wow. Amazing.
And, yeah.
So what was training like? Is it like the movies, I'm watching Rocky and you're hitting a side of beef and running on the beach and up the, that's my imagination of it.
Yeah, no.
No, okay.
But it's different for everybody. Every
Yes.
fighter trains differently. But, I remember my dad used to wear steel-toe combat boots and run in them because the weight, which I would never do. I'm like, why would you do that? I would go get some good tennis shoes and support your feet.
Yep.
But it's an old school way of thinking. He used to chop wood, and do all those things. And but for me, it was very grueling, definitely, because, again, I had to learn how to run. I had to learn everything from the very beginning, under the bright lights of everybody watching. But I pretty much went to the gym 6 days a week. You spend a couple hours at the gym. And then when you're training for an actual fight, say in training camp of like 8 to 10 weeks, then it's like full focus on fighting, nothing else. You get up, you run at like 5 a.m., then you come back and rest, like literally go back to sleep.
Did you get like a special training because you were on your way to being a fighter? This wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go twice a week for my boxing cardio. You were certain, so they were giving you the, we're training you to be a fighter.
So ever since I decided to start training, I was training to be a fighter. So I was also learning, and I was excited about learning. So literally every day, 6 days a week from the beginning, it was like, what do I need to do to be a champion? Oh, you need to come to the gym 6 days a week. Okay. You also need to run. You also need to get your rest. You also need to eat right. You also need to not drink, smoke, party. Okay, what do I need? So then, then you start weight training, and then you kind of level it up the more elite that you get.
Yeah.
But from the beginning, it was tough. From the beginning, it was consistent. And then when you go into actual training camp and you're specifically, if I'm like, I'm gonna fight you, I'm gonna watch your old tape.
Please don't.
I'm gonna watch your tape, I'm gonna study you, I'm gonna look for your weaknesses, and then I'm gonna work on those things. I'm gonna look for fighters that can get in the ring and spar with me as if they were your style, so it's very focused. Then you go back and you watch your tape. Because you record.
So it's all in.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
every
all
part
in.
of your life,
Absolutely.
the physical stuff, the diet, the training, the watching, other fighters.
And it's being in pain.
Pain, yes.
And
so talk to
still
me
keep
about
going.
that.
Yes.
Because I've done a little bit of boxing, but the second you get punched in the face, that changes your mind about how serious you want to be doing this.
Yes.
And so how does,
I'm talking about, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm talking about beyond being punched in the face, because that wasn't really the pain, believe it or not. It was more your body being sore.
Yeah.
Just your body, every muscle in your body being sore, and going back to the gym the next day to have someone beating up on your body. I sparred with men, so they were always stronger than me. They're always faster than me. They're always, more experienced than me. That's who I chose purposely. And you'd be worn down, but it makes the fight easy when the training's hard.
Yeah. There was, let me pull this up here. I remember a quote from your dad was interesting to me. I hated every minute of training, but I said, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion.
Absolutely.
Is that the attitude you had?
Yeah, I mean, with anything you do in life, if you believe that you're gonna win as long as you put in the effort, then that is always gonna be your drive. Because now it's on you. It's like, I'm in control. So you have to make that decision. Am I gonna keep going? Am I gonna keep fighting? Am I gonna push through? And if if you truly believe, yes, I'm going to win, I'm gonna be successful if I do this, then it's gonna make you wanna keep doing it. So again, when you're training in the context of what we're talking about, and you're like doing these sit-ups, and you believe okay, I just need to do 10 more, I need to push through the pain, it's burning, I'm gonna keep going, and then I'm gonna be done. And then I can feel good and not have regrets. Yeah. Because you don't want to feel like I didn't train hard enough, I didn't prepare. Damn, if I would have just trained harder, I wouldn't have gotten tired in the 8th round and lost. So it's like you're always going to keep pushing through.
There's the physical stuff. You're hitting mitts over here with your trainer. Is that that was your coach?
That was Roger Mayweather. Yep, and he
wow.
passed away. Yeah, that's Floyd Mayweather's uncle.
Wow.
Was one of my trainers.
So he's pushing you, hitting mitts, doing this kind of thing, and then you're sparring with people. And when it becomes kinetic, when it becomes live, you learn something about yourself and the person that what are some of the things you observe about the person you're sparring? Their psychology, their will, what are you figuring out as you're doing that?
That photo was actually warming up to actually go out into a professional fight. So you always hit the pads, warm up before you go out into the ring. So that was actually before a fight. But I mean, you can watch video on someone and prepare as much as you want, but you don't really know until you get in the ring.
Yeah.
So it really is about just being ready to pivot if you need to. Preparing yourself as best as you can, preparing yourself physically and mentally for any situation that may occur, and trusting that, everything is going to happen the way that it's supposed to. At that moment, you're not thinking anymore.
Yeah.
It's just like driving. We don't have to think. If you've been driving for many years, you don't have to think about it anymore. If somebody stops, you just hit your brake, or you kind of react. It's the same thing with boxing. And then there's those moments where you are thinking, where you're like, okay, I see this person keeps making this mistake. Next time she drops that hand, if I see you throwing a punch and bringing your hand back here, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait, and then I'm gonna hit her on the side of her head as soon as that hand comes back down. So that's the different levels of fighting. Like when you can actually get in that moment where you're in it and you can think and you can set things up, then you're winning.
So talk to me about your first fight, because I can't imagine the butterflies, the lights, you're walking in there, you're carrying the Ali name. So your dad had it easier in that being the underdog, not noticed, you can kind of figure things out yourself and you don't have that scrutiny. What was that like the first time you walked into a ring?
The first time ever?
Yeah.
It was amazing because I was carrying a lot. But at that point, it become public that I was fighting. There wasn't a whole lot of support. Remember, there was the whole, this is a publicity stunt. She's too pretty. How's she gonna do it? Women shouldn't box. My dad told me not to do it. My dad told me I couldn't do it. Mind you, this is not just my dad. This is the greatest of all time telling me, who has decided on her own with no help of my father. It wasn't like, this is my daughter, show her the ropes. I'm gonna get you the best of everything, take care of her. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was me finding my own trainer, doing my own thing, just out there.
Wow.
At 18,
Yeah.
with the whole world watching, and the greatest told me not to do it. You can't do it.
Was that a chip on your shoulder?
Absolutely. I was like, I'm gonna show his ass.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was like, okay, this is that moment. So again, it's a very lonely moment in the sense of you got to go in there and do this.
Yeah.
So you can have your crew and your trainer and all that, but guess what? When that bell rings, it's just you in that corner. So I was really excited. I actually wasn't nervous. There's always butterflies before the fight, but I felt like I just wanted to get in there and I wanted to do it.
So you talk about the physical training a bunch. Is there something that the psychology of it? Is there something that you did, and is there something that you did to your opponent? Because your dad famously would get under people's skins and trash talk a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you balance it runs in the family? So talk to me about that. Why is that important?
You win the fight before the fight even starts. A lot of times it's mental. So when you have the opportunity, to finally look at the person that you're fighting in the eye, that's when you can size them up and really see, like, does this person really think they can win? I can tell right away, and there's a certain energy, a certain confidence that I have, and I think that a lot of times when people assume, pretty girl, she's Muhammad Ali's daughter, she had a silver spoon in her mouth, I'm gonna be soft, and then when they meet me, they're like, ooh, I didn't realize she had that rough side to her, that edge, right? And then and I'm a big woman, physically. So, so I'm definitely going to impose all of that.
5 seconds into our first Zoom call, you had a presence. I'm like, wow. Okay.
So that presence, like you said, is really important.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have to get in the ring and do what you do to back it up. But I never was like my dad in the sense, my dad more put on a show.
Yeah.
And to sell the fight more so. Whereas I more did a lot of my scenes, my behind the scenes work, to the opponent specifically, so.
You have amazing accolades as a boxer. You're a 5-time undefeated world champion with 90% of your wins ending in knockouts. How about a big hand? 24-0 record.
Thank you.
20 knockouts. It's an incredibly difficult sport, and to be undefeated and to be a 4-time world champion, that's like unheard of. So what do you attribute that to having 24 fights like that? And did you ever feel like some of these were borderline, or you had to do something different, or the training, how you thought it might go, the winning the fight before you step into the ring? Maybe many of them were like that, but were any more challenging than you expected?
I attribute it to just so many different things. Definitely confidence, definitely, DNA, but also having the right team around me, the right trainers around me, and my commitment to just excellence. No matter what happened in a fight, I mean, I've won all of my fights, I would always go back and look for the mistakes. So yeah, you celebrate, but then you go back and let me see what I did that she didn't take advantage of, So I just wanted to get better every time. I was very impatient with my growth. I see things, I want to be able to do that, that I see other people do, or certain skills or certain things I want in my arsenal. So when you're just kind of I'm not just in there to win and just make money, I want to get to be the best that I can be, then every single fight I was improving. So, and with that, with all of the things, like I said, the confidence, the DNA, physical size, strength, power, speed, all these things that were God-given, put with the work and dedication and the decisions that you make in terms of your team, it was really hard to beat.
Yeah. There was a Mike Tyson quote I remember from way back. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And I think that's true of whatever field that you're in. You can do all the planning you want to, and then suddenly reality hits and something unexpected happens. Did you ever find that for yourself or your opponent, that they had the game plan, they were gonna, figure out how to take down Laila Ali, but what's the reality that people suddenly confront in a real situation?
Well, they always had a game plan, but it never worked. I mean, every fighter has a game plan, But I would say that, I have been in some fights that unexpected things happened. One of my biggest fights was when I fought Jackie Frazier, which is Joe Frazier's daughter. Some of you are young maybe, or aren't into boxing, but my father fought someone named Joe Frazier 3 times, and it was some of his biggest, most famous fights. It's when my dad was stripped of his title because he wouldn't go to the war. He was a champ. He was stripped of his title in his prime, wasn't fighting, and then Joe Frazier became the champion. Then my father was able to fight him for the title, so it was personal.
Yeah.
It was you're not the real champ. You didn't win it from me. So he got in Joe Frazier's head, but he used to call him names and call him ugly, call him gorilla, really disrespect the guy. But it was all part of, all is fair in war.
Yeah.
And long story short, Jackie Frazier decided to start boxing after I started boxing, and I wasn't feeling her. We weren't feeling each other, but she had all this, animosity because she was growing up as a young girl. My father was publicly embarrassing her dad. You know what I mean? So she had a chip on her shoulder too. So we fought.
That was a real one. That was.
And I just wanted to just steamroll over her, and I ended up getting the flu before the fight.
Ooh.
Yes. So I fought her with 102. Nobody knew. But I knew. But I thought the fight was, I was like, this would be a piece of cake. It's okay. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And it was a big promotion. I wasn't going to back out. And I felt so confident that I could beat her even with the flu. So, but by the 3rd round, I was out of gas. And I was throwing punches, but I had no power. When you have the flu or you're sick, you just have no energy.
Yeah.
So it ended up going the distance. I won, but I didn't knock her out. It was a tough fight. I mean, it was a tough fight. Because I thought it was going to be so easy. That's my young mind, and just and then she was there. She was fighting hard. And I probably, if I wasn't sick, I probably would have got her out of there, in maybe the 3rd or the 4th.
Yeah.
But because, I was in the state that I was in,
yeah.
And then I regret that I didn't have a rematch with her. Yeah. And I'm the one that wouldn't do the rematch.
What I see in your life is, one, getting into new frontier. A lot of people have a fear of doing that, getting into an uncomfortable zone and doing something, especially when the eyes are on you, not making excuses. You could have pulled out of that fight having a flu and not feeling quite right, and the still carrying through and fighting your way through. So I'm curious about this, because you did something at that point where I think 10-year career in boxing, you decided to retire from boxing and move on to this next phase of your career. So tell me about the pivot and what motivated you to jump to do something different.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to box forever, and I pretty much just ran out of people to fight. You know, no, seriously. I know it sounds funny, but it's just that in my weight class, 168 pounds at the time, there wasn't a lot of competition, and the level of competition just was all over the place. So I had pretty much fought everyone that inspired me. And then it started to be to the point where I'm fighting, because I have to fight. When you have titles, you have to defend your titles. And I have to fight someone that I know is just not really going to be a competitive fight. So to keep training at an elite level and not really feel challenged was one of the big issues. And then I wanted to start a family. So I said, you know what, it's time to move on. It's time to move on and do something different. So I decided to retire. And had my last fight in South Africa, and Nelson Mandela was in attendance, and that was super exciting for me, yeah.
Did your dad ever show up for your fights?
Oh, yeah. He was at probably more than half of them, but with his Parkinson's, he wasn't always able to be there.
So this was your zone of being uncomfortable, and then you moved into a different zone, and this is different than what you were doing before. Different. What are we looking at?
So Dancing with the Stars called, right after I decided to retire. And I was like, no way, I'm not doing that. Like, that's corny, and like, no. And then I was like, you know what, wait. Before you say no to my team, I was like, let me think about this. And I'm like, I fought so hard for so many years to be seen as a boxer that was always game face, hair braided, talking about knocking people out. You know, it was kind of intimidating, you know. And now I want to do something different and be seen in a different light. And I was like in this box. So Dancing with the Stars was a perfect opportunity to strategically show another side of myself. Didn't want to do it at all. But I was like, I need to do it. And I went on the show. And my goal was to make it to the end. Not necessarily to win. I want to win, but I knew that wasn't really fully in my control. So I said, I want those 40 million viewers a week, make it to the end, and that's what I did. I was in the finals, and from there, I was able to start my television career, you know, and my first show I did was with Hulk Hogan, American Gladiators, and I kind of went from there. And I was still trying to feel my way around. Like, what am I actually going to do that I'm going to be passionate about, like I was towards boxing? And it took me a little while to figure that out. Yeah, that's how it all started.
So that was one of the things, but you're also an entrepreneur. So talk to me about some of the other ventures that you're involved in.
So as I mentioned, the television thing wasn't like, oh, I just want to be on TV, but these opportunities were there, so I wanted to take advantage of them, and of course also make money. But again, I was like, I don't want to have to rely on someone hiring me. I've always been my own boss with the nail salon, with boxing, kind of being in control. So for me, I wanted to start my own brand, which is the Laila Ali lifestyle. And you know, I realized I was really passionate about helping others become the best they could be, you know, through their mindset, through their health, you know, and their purpose in life. And those are things that I had to learn under the lights. And I was like, okay, this is what Laila Ali lifestyle is going to be about. So I really started working on my own brand. And then, of course, as my public persona grew, it was like, okay, let me choose, like when I competed on Chopped, and I won, by the way, twice. Oh my God. That's big. I mean, I'm proud of that championship. So, but it was because I knew I was going to do Food for Life, my cookbook, because I've always had a passion for cooking, and now I have my Laila Ali spice blends, and I was like, strategically, I need to go on Chopped so that I can be seen in this way, you know. But that was big. Like, I wanted to win. Yeah. And I did, and you know.
I mean, whatever thing that you do, it's clear you want to win at that thing that you. And so I
mean, shouldn't we all? You know, you can't win them all, right? But you know, certain things. Like, I'm a competitive person, but I'm not that type of person that takes myself too seriously. Now, in the ring, that's my ring. Like, I'm not. My mama better not get in that ring, or we're gonna have. I'm just joking. But everything else is like, there is some fun to it. But I saw Chopped as, like I said, strategically is what I needed to do. If I didn't win, I still would have been able to move on. You know. Yeah.
So there's so much about how you found the strength, pushed through adversity. There's probably a lot of people here who've had moments in their life, you know, we've just gone through a pandemic where we had to be very, very empathetic with each other. But grit is another Movable Inc. value: curiosity, empathy, and grit. How do you draw into a store of energy when you're not feeling it, you're feeling run down, to pursue something and be uncomfortable? Are there things that others could learn or cultivate, even if they're not naturally born with your kind of competitive attitude?
So I've been uncomfortable since day one, right? So get comfortable being uncomfortable, because we know that that's how you grow, and that's what it takes, right? For me, I always think about, like when you mentioned, what do you do when you're just not feeling it? Like you're either gonna do what it takes or you're not. You're either gonna put in the effort or you're not. You're either gonna stay disciplined or you're not. I think about what's gonna happen if I don't, right? What's gonna happen if I don't? The failure, whatever that means to you, and that feeling alone just makes me go, oh, hell no, like I got to do this, it's gonna get me get going, because, I don't want to be sitting on the sideline wondering what could have been, ever. I don't want to have regrets because of something I didn't do, So again, when I go back to when I was talking about earlier, when you believe in yourself and have that self-belief that, if I put in the work, if I stay dedicated, I'm going to reach the end, I'm going to reach my goal, that will continually drive you forward.
In addition to your entrepreneurial ventures, giving back has always been a priority for you. And so you've been influential with organizations like the Women's Sports Foundation, Feeding America. You were selected for ESPN, who just spoke this morning, the Sports Humanitarian Awards. So it's incredible to see the entire Ali family, and you're kind of carrying that forward. What instilled in you the belief of giving back and helping others?
Definitely watching my father do it, being bigger than life, like people say. But he always let us know I'm actually not. I'm just a regular person. And knowing that my father was just a little boy from Louisville, Kentucky, at the end of the day, who believed in himself and decided to become a boxer. And what people love about him is that who he is as a person, more so. All the lives that he touched by just standing up for what he believed in. And unfortunately, this is something most people aren't willing to do. They're not willing to put their money on the line, their career on the line, just to do what's right, right? And he did this without an entourage, all that, just on his own. So again, he's a young boy from Louisville, Kentucky, who believed in himself and who put in the work. So anyone can do that. Anyone can have that type of an impact. Right? The gentleman who introduced my father to boxing, got him in the gym, didn't know that he was going to be the next Muhammad Ali. He's just as important in terms of holding his hand. So every piece of the puzzle is important. You know what I mean? I forgot what the original question was.
The giving back and.
Right. So I was saying that watching my father never feel like he was too good, never feel like he was better than anybody else, and using his platform for good was just kind of a standard that was set to where I just feel like we all should be giving back in our own way, whether it's money, whether it's time, you know what I mean, whether it's education. That's how we make this world a better place. Yeah. So there's no way that I wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't be able to just live my life and just be like, oh, success, money, for what? Like, at the end of it all, right? When it's all over, you can't take any of that with you. And we forget that sometimes, right? And it's usually when people get older in life, they start thinking about who they are as a person and what they've done for others when their life gets towards the end, right? And then they start thinking about that. But I luckily had the opportunity to have it right in my face where I'm thinking about it from day one,
Is there, your dad and you as well, the way you conduct your life, you're beyond the sport, you've transcended the sport, and you've got a much bigger personality than that, and the influence and the inspiration you're giving to others, I really admire. Is there someone in your life, besides your dad, that you find, you've kind of got inspiration from and feel like you were motivated by?
So many, not anyone famous. It's really hard to top my father in terms of a public person. Because I see a lot of people who are successful and who have attained a lot, but I really look at who you are as a core, as a person, your values, and it's really hard to beat my father when it comes to that. But I really drew inspiration from a lot of the women that I had the opportunity to be around, like some of my friends' mothers and things that were just regular working women trying to make ends meet. They might have been single, they might have been married. I'm gonna relate more to women because I'm a woman. but also the men, the dads, because I feel like that balance needs to be there. We all bring something different to the table. But those women, like I said, that are just regular everyday women, and that's a big part of who I am as well, is me as a mother. Like, my family comes first. They're my first priority, so I'm cooking dinner, I'm helping the kids with the homework. I'm like, you wouldn't think I'm a public person at all by the way that I live my life.
And if your kids want a box?
No. Luckily, my children do not have a desire, and they do not have the temperament. Yeah. So I dodge that bullet. Like, neither of them are interested. They're both athletes. They both have what it takes to go very far in sports, but not football. My husband's played football in the NFL. So thank God, not that, and not boxing. So, yes. Yeah.
Laila, you're an inspiration to all of us. Your champion mindset, I think it's infectious. Everyone feels that energy from you. So thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for inviting me.